All right. Hello, Home Service Pros. Welcome to the Battle Plan Marketing Podcast, episode number 124. Today we have a super special guest on the show, Mr. Chris Cruz from the Blue Collar Success Group. I think we're going to get a good conversation going today on something a little bit different than the norm. Kicking butt out there, 127 five-star reviews on Google. So without further ado, Chris Cruz, let's say hello.
Welcome to the Battle Plan Marketing Podcast for contractors. Get actionable advice and tactics on how to grow your home service company. Plus interviews with industry experts dropping value bombs in marketing, sales, and operations. And now let's power up your home service biz with your host, Mark Ambrose of Battle Plan Marketing.
How are you doing today? Thanks for having me in.
Oh, thanks for coming on, Chris. We appreciate you sharing the knowledge and advice with the audience out there.
Perfect.
So tell us what you guys do. You're a unique little, or not little, but a unique company. So what do you guys do? Who do you do it for? Where do you do it?
Yeah, so Mark, we're a coaching and training and development organization for home service contractors, specifically in the plumbing, heating and air, electrical trades. I'm actually an electrician myself by trade. And so I found that contractors are really, really good at the technical thing that they do as their trade, but sometimes they get a little stuck and jammed up when it relates to the business components and fully understanding. And so our company is designed to be able to accelerate the path of success for home service companies by meeting them exactly where they're at and helping them to accomplish their goals.
Awesome. And do you have a particular contractor type in mind or size? So plumbing, HVAC, right? Electrical, you said?
Correct.
How about size, Chris? You looking for smaller, mid-sized, large, or doesn't matter?
So Mark, that's the interesting part. Our company understands that contractors are all going to be at various stages in their career and life cycle of the business. And we didn't want to go to just one avatar, if you would, of contractor that says, hey, you have to be a certain size before you can join. Because the question is, what about until I get to that point, right? So who's going to help me get to that point? So our business is set up on a model that allows a contractor to progress. So example is we can take a one truck operator and work with them. So our tools, resources, and training are designed at that level of membership. So it's a progression model. So once I have, quote, accomplished everything there is to accomplish at this size, it's time to move to the next level. So there's no need to leave the organization. Example I would share with you, Mark, is we do have currently one truck operators that join Blue Collar that we have helped grow out of that one truck operator. How do I get out of a truck? But we serve people over $100 million as well, multi-trade, multi-state, multi-location type of business.
Nice.
So once again, our business model is specifically designed for every contractor in the plumbing, heating and air, and electrical trades.
I like it. So like you said, you meet them where they are. Small, medium, large, doesn't matter. Everybody needs training, guidance, mentorship, etc.
Exactly.
So take me through, let's say, a lot of one truck chucks out there. Let's, before we go there, so plumbing, HVAC, electrical, yes? Did I miss anything?
Yep, no. We do also, Mark, from time to time, there will be other home service type of companies that have come to us and said, hey, we need help, and there's nobody in their space. So we also help. This sounds really, really wide range, but in-home private nursing care, closet companies, countertop companies, landscape companies, like they're there. It's just not our primary avatar of what we're looking for. Once again, we're trying to help people, and there's only so much of us to go around, but we want to make sure that if they're in dire straits, they need help from coaching and training. We want to be able to offer that service. Just understand that our tools and resources are built for plumbing, electrical, heating, and cooling.
Right. But a lot of it is systems and training, and it would apply to it sounds like, any home service company. You can take them to a certain point, perhaps, if they're not in one of your industries.
Exactly. Yes.
Sweet. So if I'm a one truck chuck plumber, what can you guys do for me? How do I get the hell out of my truck and move on?
Yeah. So we always look at it from this perspective is that person that's a one truck operator is probably really good. We're just use plumbing today for the example. I'm a really good plumber, but something happened that I decided that, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go do this for myself. And a lot of people don't recognize what they're signing up for when they do that. It's a huge amount of responsibility along with the learning curve. I'm speaking from personal experience. At 20 years old, I left the electrical company I worked for and went and started my own business. And I only owned a paycheck. That's all I owned. I didn't really own a business that was of any value and worth. And so what we're able to do is to be able to help that one truck operator to move forward that. And this is not something that was read in a book. This is based on real world experiences of actually doing that and making it happen. Very first thing that we do is what we do with all of our contractors. The number one reason why a business fails is they don't price their services correctly.
Absolutely.
So the very first thing we do there is get them to understand what that actually means. What does it mean to price your service correctly? Because a lot of times, I left the plumbing company and they were charging, if they charge time and material, they were charging $100 an hour. And I go, well, I'll charge 90 and I'll have a line out the door of work. And that's not how that works, right? So they end up in more trouble than they bargained for.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. And you hit it on the head, right? So obviously you guys got the experience. So, the guy's a great skilled technician. Hey, I'm going to do it on my own, but there's a lot of business skills needed. And it does indeed start with price. So what do you get them into a price book and some software, or do you get into some basic accounting principles? Where are you going to take me if I'm my one truck plumber here?
Yep. So the very first thing that we do, Mark, is we actually do what's called a one truck break even. We help the in this scenario, a plumber, to understand what is the real cost of running this business. It's more than just material and your time and maybe the truck. And what we typically find is those contractors don't charge enough because they lack confidence. They lack confidence in what they need to charge. And so one of the things that we do at the Blue Collar Success Group is to help that business owner understand not only what they need to charge, but the value that they bring to the table by providing a service. And so we are not a software company. Use whatever software you want. We have relationships with software companies. We're not going to ask you to change your accounting, but we do talk about accounting practices. So when it comes to accounting practices, these are the things that you need to know when it comes to accounting. How to read an income statement. What is the income statement actually telling me? Because most contractors, let's face it, at a one truck operator, you're working out of the checkbook.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys go through that. Basic principles, income statement, balance sheet. And exactly, it's a lot more than just the cost of your truck, your gas, your insurance. They probably don't even calculate insurance and things like that, right? Even with the truck. So you get them to see the big picture of what it's really costing them to turn that key, start that truck, and roll it out per mile or whatever, per hour.
Yeah, and then what we see there, Mark, is after they build a one truck operation, then they start to gain confidence from that. And from there, it's a matter of equation, right? How do I add the second truck? And so when it comes to that, and this is where, in the example of the plumber, they believe their next best move is to add another plumber, but that's not always the case. So this is the uniqueness for Blue Collar. If you're better served at being in the office and being on the phones and running the inside of the business, then we may be talking about hiring another plumber, getting you out of the field. And so once again, we help that plumber to understand financially, when does it make sense for you to come out of the field? But a lot of them think that that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to get out of the field. And we here at Blue Collar subscribe to a concept of just because you're good at it doesn't mean you should do it. It's, do you also enjoy it? And so if I'm a plumber and I'm good at it and I enjoy it, why would I work myself to becoming a manager of a business? And that's not what I really wanted. So once again, nobody said you had to work on the inside of the business. So your next step might be adding another plumber. Maybe your third step is you're adding somebody in the office to run the office component for you. So once again, there's not a cookie cutter that says this is how everybody should do it exactly. However, success does leave clues. And as you build and grow, you've got to step into what your unique advantages are.
I like it. I'm definitely guilty myself of thinking that all of my clients want to get the hell out of the office. And that's not necessarily true. It just made me realize, of course, maybe I love plumbing or HVAC or whatever I'm doing, and I don't want to leave the field. Mm-hmm. I just want to grow my business, and maybe I bring on a general manager at some point. Do you guys get into that, like hiring, what to look for in a GM and how to go through that process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we take them through a process of what they're looking for. In many cases, when supply and demand is out of balance for work, either way, a lot of times we'll get very desperate and make desperation hires, and it's the worst thing for a business. So one of the things that we help owners do and managers do is identify what are you really looking for. And I'll give you the example. If I'm a plumber and I'm a one truck operator and I'm really good at communicating and I'm, quote, good at sales, I might not need to hire another selling plumber. I might need to hire somebody that's good at installing material or an installer, right? So a lot of people don't think in that line of thought. So this is, once again, what are you looking for? What are your skill sets? Well, hey, I think I need another fill in the blank. We'll help them vet that out and see if that truly is what they need. However, we do have specific tactics that we use when it goes about recruiting, of the ad that you post, how you go about recruiting, how you conduct the interview, and all these things help line up for success. A lot of people would just go, just give me the perfect employee. We don't know what that is. We've got to understand what it means for you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like it. Customizing to the need, to start with the owner. What do you want to do? What do you love doing? And then let's build a team around you that supports that.
Exactly.
Instead of maybe hiring, somebody who does what you do.
Absolutely.
Or wants to, or what you want to do. Beautiful. Let's go back to price book for a sec. Sorry, Chris, you probably answered me, but it left my brain already. So you take them through the accounting on what it costs to roll out a truck, which is the most important thing. And then do you work with them at that point with software if they have, or do you suggest something that they, price book software?
Yeah, and there are plenty of softwares out there that are great. There's many on the market. And so what I would say is, if someone is not using a software, so if I'm listening to this podcast and I'm on no software at all, where should I get started? Well, the answer is you should first start with, where do you think you want to take your business? Because the most painful thing to do is switch softwares, right? So it's very painful to have to switch from one software to another. It's not just the learning curve. It's all the setup and time and effort and energy you got to go through. So the question is, find the solution that you can grow with if you want to grow. So do I need just a price book? Well, at the Blue Collar Success Group, we do have a tool to help you to build your own price book, but it's not what we do. That's not the main thing. We give you all the methodology in which to build your own price book. And different markets will vary based on the types of task, but from a theory standpoint, all price books, no matter if you're time and material or your flat rate, we're all selling the same stuff. It's just how we package it. So once again, we teach you how to do that. There's no specific software that we push people to. If you're on a software today and you come to us and say, hey, help me build and grow my business, the first thing we ask is not what software you're on. Oh, well, that's not going to work. We got to change softwares. I'm not interested in doing that. What I'm interested in is building and growing a business.
I like it. Go with the flow, wherever they're at.
Yes.
Once again, meeting them where they are at, as you say.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take it through. So I've got my one truck. I'm through phase one with you guys. We've realized I want to get out of the field. I want to be the GM, and I want to hire some people. And now are you helping with the hiring process, A? And then B, are you helping me create systems so I'm not getting phone calls all day long for price checks, for, who knows what, right? So SOPs.
Mark, sounds like you've worked inside of a service business before. You know exactly the life that
I work with a lot of them. So yeah, I can talk the talk. I haven't run one myself. I've worked for them way back in the old days as a gopher kind of thing.
Yeah.
But just learning from working with these guys. That's all.
Yeah, well, so it's a great question. So we have tools, once again, at each level of our membership, based on where we believe that you're at and where you can achieve at the level membership, are the tools that are specifically designed for a contractor, i.e. business owner. That could be a plumber in this scenario. We're talking plumbers. This doesn't mean that that's all we do. We do plumbing, heating and air, and electrical. But if you're the owner, you're saying, hey, I need to start building some processes, right? Because I know that everything can't be tied to me and I can't be the answer for everything. So we have tools for that. Some of our tools are what we call done for you, which means it's already built out and done for you. We like to refer to it as the franchise without the fee. So anything that you want, what I encourage though, Mark, is an example of this, and it's kind of silly, but we always ask business owners, like, what's the process of how the business opens up every day? And I'm amazed at the amount of owners that go, well, the building just gets opened up. Susie comes in and she's the first one in and she makes coffee and she turns, but nothing's documented anywhere. And so that's one of the most simplest things that we teach how to create momentum is to get a few under your belt. A lot of people are like, no. I know what we should do. We should get a process of how we order material and return material. And it's like, that can be pretty complex, right? So first off, let's get a couple easy ones under our belt just so that you can be in the right train of thought. Once again, we're trying to create new habits and new thinking patterns for business owners. And so while some of them are just done for you, for example, having in place, we call them scorecards, but we have resources literally for every position in the business that is a job, duty, role, responsibility description for everybody in the business. Nice. So that's kind of a done for you. However, we also have ones that can be altered. So you might have a position in your business that we don't have a scorecard for. Great. We're going to help you build that out. And that would be just one example. In addition to that, Mark, I'm going to refer to it, for lack of better words, the selling system, which, by the way, is the second reason why a business fails. Number one is they're not priced right. Number two is once they get priced, they don't know how to charge that price. They're afraid that customers are going to look at them like they got three heads and get thrown out of the house, right? So because typically it's more than what they think.
Yeah, they're uncomfortable with the new numbers.
Exactly. Yep. So after we get them comfortable with that, we have what we call the blue-collar selling system. And the blue-collar selling system is comprised of multiple academies that we teach and train, not just the owner, the manager, but all the team members that go with it. So we take that responsibility off of you, right? No plumber, no electrician, no heating and air technician said, I'm a great trainer. They're probably a good doer, but rarely do they lack the skills to be able to develop at that size, right? That's something that you learn how to do over a period of time. Not to say they can't get good at it, but typically it's not something they're great at out of the gate. So we offer a class for here's how you answer the phone. We offer a class for here's how you dispatch. We offer a class for here's how you run a service call. We offer a class for here's how you run a big ticket call. So if I'm a plumber and I get the phone call of, hey, we need to get a new water heater, that call is actually ran a little different than if the water heater just wasn't working, right? So we teach the process. And then two more classes in addition to that, we have another class that we teach. It's called the outbound. So we teach you how to do follow-ups. We teach you how to follow up with clients that said no, and we teach you how to put calls on the board when you're slow. The last class we teach is what we call Management Growth Academy. That's where our 3-day academy helps managers become better managers, ultimately becoming better leaders. So all of that is what we call our selling system to be able to support the business owner in their initiative. So when you talk processes, all those are done for you. You just got to go learn the process.
Wow, beautiful, man. You guys have got it all A to Z, all wired out. Nice. So once they get through that process, Chris, now do we look back at them in 3 months and we start to see, okay, your booking rate is below par, or your close rate is below par, your follow-up rate, whatever. So do we take a look at them a little later and to see where there's some holes and additional training needed?
Absolutely. So, one of the things is that we're going to do is we're going to come alongside of the business owner. We are an extension of the team, if you would. So no more does the contractor have to, quote, be a solo entrepreneur anymore, stuck on an island. Social media has helped with a lot of this, and social media has been able to connect contractors across the country with one another. And there are people that, out of the kindness of their heart, they provide time and their efforts and to be able to help people. But that is what we do for a living. That is what people pay us for. So you're not getting, hey, I'm sorry, I can't take your call right now because we're busy. Everything that we do is we assign a specific coach to that client. So if it's a one truck operator, we know exactly where that one truck operator is financially. We understand what's going on in their business. So to your point, do we measure? Absolutely. So we have a 5-step process in how we coach all of our clients. And one of those steps is where we measure and find opportunity. And so, Mark, let's pretend that you're the plumber and we notice that your field closing rate is subpar. Our coaches are going to start, I don't want to use the word interview, but they're going to have a discussion with you and a conversation to understand, are you following the system? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? And what I like to refer to is troubleshooting. I'm just trying to figure out what's broken in the system.
Exactly.
And then we offer coaching based on that.
Nice. Awesome, man. Great system there, Chris. I like it. How about, let's go back to kind of early in the beginning there. So, I've got my new prices and I'm uncomfortable with them, right? It's going to be a normal process. 100% of the time, I'd be willing to bet. So do you get me now to, okay, Mark, what is your unique value proposition? Why should the customer hire, me, Mark the plumber, instead of my competitors? Do you go through a process there? I imagine you do. So I'm just trying to pull it out of you, Chris.
So I will tell you, Mark, there are a lot of fantastic coaching and training organizations in our space, of which many of them are my friends and colleagues. I would consider them friends. This is where, if you have someone that's experienced, and I've experienced other coaching and training organizations as a contractor myself. So I would say that this is the one area, Mark, where we excel at and others choose to stay away from it, which is the mindset component. And we spend a lot of time in our trainings around the mindset, because if you get the 6-inch gap between your ears solved and fixed, everything else becomes really easy, because I believe and I understand. So remember that as adults, the most important thing we want to know is why, not just how, but why. And so we teach a lot of philosophies with real life application, along with the mindset component of keeping your mind right. I mean, we live in a society today that's constantly bombarding us with negative energy and information. So how do we step away from that? We're not we're not like a spiritual coaching organization, but there's a component of human beings that we need to get our head right. And we teach that to technicians as well. That's
awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, that's the biggest part, I would say, personally, outside of having the skill set, either A, being a great tech at, a trade, or B, you're a great business operator. And it doesn't matter what business you're in. If you're a great service business operator, you can plumbing, HVAC, whatever.
Exactly.
Right? So, and that starts with, of course, skill sets, but mindset first and foremost, I would say. Nice. Okay, so now we're through phase 1, phase 2. I'm feeling good. We got some follow-up. What happens after that? Take me to the next phase. I don't know your system, right?
Yep. So now what we start doing is finding opportunity to build and grow the business. So the very first thing that we're going to do from there now is identify, where do you want to take this thing? How big do you want to build it? What's the number? What's the number of trucks? Because, it's funny, Mark, when I hear this, and oftentimes we'll have potential clients that come to us and they want to, explore who we are and what we do. And oftentimes we'll hear things like they already have a coach. And so not looking you to get rid of your coach, keep your coach. You got the relationship, everything's fine. But 9 times out of 10, Mark, I always ask, so what's your goal? Well, I don't know. And I'm like, I thought you had a coach. Well, I do. Well, what's your coach helping you achieve? Well, they just help me with business. Okay, but what's the goal? So I love, we go back and we look at what Covey said, and he said, you have to start with the end in mind. So what does the end look like for you? Hey, I want to build this thing, grow it, and sell it. Okay, that's a start. How big does it need to be? Well, I don't know. Well, how much money are you trying to get at? So once again, next step is, where are we taking this thing? Let's get this thing to where it's stable and you're feeling good. You've got some momentum. You're starting to feel, hey, man, I can do this. So what happens is now I've got this confidence that's built inside of me because the things that you've asked me to do, and this is a part of our secret that I'm sharing, is once we get some good wins under the belt of that business owner, then they begin to establish a good trust and rapport with us. And as a part of that, that's when we start opening the door on the, how big do you want to go? And then from there, we start putting the plan together and working in reverse. all the way back to where they're at right now. Once again, following the concept of Covey, which is start with the end in mind, because things become really clear if you get to the destination. Mark, it's funny. I always tell people I used to cheat at those little mazes as a kid. They put on the paper. It says start here and end here. I was like, I'm going to the end and I'll work my way back to the start. And rarely did I make a mistake because I can see what's coming, right? And the same would be true in business. Yep. If you try to get out in front, you can envision where you want to go. So our next step is to identify where you want to go. And then from there, a customized plan with continuous training, elevating. Really good chance at this point, Mark, they've grown our membership at that entry level at the One Truck to where they need to open and unlock additional tools and resources and training. So we're having that conversation. Right. We've got benchmarks at each level. It says, hey, once you've accomplished all of this, that's about as far as you're going to get with this thing, unless you're just like, hey, I can go figure out the rest on my own. What's the next step look like for me? So next step is more tools, resources, and training. We take you through that. And once again, every business is a little unique once we start moving out of the 3 to 4 trucks, which is about where that entry level is going to get.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing to me, even myself for a long time, had no idea what that end goal was. We're just going through the day to day. And Bill, I want to build my business or whatever. What the hell does that mean, right? So, where are you taking it? I like it. Let's talk like profitability and stuff. So let's go back to my plumber example. Do you sit down and say, okay, Mark, the plumber, here, well, maybe it's a question, right? What services do you love doing? What are your high margin services? So that's where I'm trying to steer it. Do you help them find a niche within a niche? So, and then take like direct response marketing and target that niche as opposed to just like search ads and things like that, hoping they come to you. So pulling people instead of pushing them.
Very, very thought out question. And my response to that, Mark, would be more along the line of, let's go high level and go service for a moment, maintenance and replacement, right? So if I just said, hey, those are kind of the 3 areas that home service contractors are going to be in. You're going to be either repairing things, you're going to be maintaining things, or you're going to be replacing things. And so what we know is that there's higher margin dollars in replacement,
right?
Higher margin percentage in service. So volume wins the day. And so once again, I'm going to characterize that business based on what are they good at? Well, if they're not good in this scenario, I give you an example, Mark. Let's say I'm really, really good at drain cleaning as a plumber. And if you're listening to the podcast, you're an electrician or HVAC, don't check out on us. Like we're using that as the example.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
yeah.
I can give you electrical and HVAC examples like this all day long, right? So while I might be able to run a 67% gross margin in service, and I'm only running a 50% gross margin in replacement, most people go, well, let's just go do service. But if I'm in replacement, they're bigger tickets. Therefore, it's more gross margin dollars. And the key to profitability is gross margin dollars per hour. The challenge of that, Mark, is getting business owners to wrap their mind around what that means. So what do? We teach them things like close rate, average ticket. Now we can talk margins and job costing on those jobs and not be so focused on gross margin dollars per hour. It's really the same concept. We're just backing into it, if that makes sense. A way to look at that based on, okay, you sold a job for 6 hours and it took you 4 hours to do it. You're doing pretty good. So your gross margin per billable hour is going to be really high because you've outperformed. So to this point, if I'm a plumber and I'm in a market where sewer and lining and replacement's a really, really big deal because a lot of older house in my market.
Yes.
Or maybe I'm doing service work and I didn't even know that was a real thing. Like, how do I get this lining business? And that's an investment, right? You got it. But if you're already doing it and you just haven't figured out how to capitalize, that's where we excel a lot, how to capitalize on things. So at that point, Mark, we would then identify, you guys are good at all the replacement, because I do hear this at times. Oh yeah, we sub that out. Oh, like, wow. Why? There's not structure for it. Now we have a conversation about why it's beneficial to get into it. but business owners only hear what they're ready and prepared to hear. And so as a coach, we'll hear our clients say this from time to time. Yeah, Chris, I know we talked about that 12 months ago, but I'm ready to hear what you got to say now. So in that point, we would go to an older market, identify, well, if you did one pipelining job here, then let's geofence that thing. Let's find every home that's in that area. Let's do some market study research, and let's have a direct mail company create us a direct mail piece of an offering of, these were the pictures of what I found in your neighbor's, sewer. Right. Free camera inspection to do you deal with slow drains or clogged drains often? You're probably dealing with the same thing. Let us come out and do a camera inspection for you. And so that while Mark, we're not the marketing expert, that's what you guys do. We're able to at least get them directionally correct to say, hey, this is what a good marketing piece would look like, but have somebody else build and design and deploy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you understand the industry, those profit centers are there, drain cleaning, leak detection, water heaters, whatever it may be. So what's, give me some of those maybe on the electrical side. What are good margin, jobs out there in the electrical world?
Yeah. So higher margin dollars on the electrical side are replacements of panels, replacements and upgrades of electrical services. And what I would say is most companies try to go after that to generate a lot of revenue quickly. The challenge is the replacement cycle of a panel or a service is about 25 to 30 years. So once you replace it, they're not going to need another one of those. Like a water heater is going to, approximately every 10 to 12 years. Life cycle is much shorter. AC furnace. I'm in a market where the AC replacement cycle, we have more cooling hours than we have heating hours in my market. 8 to 10 years on that replacement cycle. So from the electrical side, what I encourage people is to quit just thinking the big ticket, because that big ticket, you also have to factor in replacement cycle, right? How often will I do a job like that? But a really good job as well is redevices. So what does that actually mean and look like? We teach a whole process and how we can actually have that conversation. And by the way, let me be really, really clear for somebody listening. Do not mistake blue collar for the company that teaches you how to sell stuff customers does not need. We pride ourselves on doing the right thing. So we teach solution-based repairs, right? You got to fix the reason why they called, not just be a parts changer or a parts pusher. So smoke detectors. Now, smoke detectors, life cycle of replacements only between 7 and 10 years. So high margin item, doesn't take a lot of time to replace it. Once again, got to be good at selling them, right? And you got to be good at the add-on component. And there's a whole process. So if you're an electrician listening, it's not just replacing the smoke detectors. If they need to be replaced, there's a high probability they're not in all the right locations. So now I'm adding on additional smoke detectors. That's one example. So
nice. And they hardwiring those?
Yeah. Some markets will allow a hardwire, but what they call an IR, an RF frequency smoke detector that ties together wirelessly, so they all go off together to ensure that the system's installed correctly without getting into semantics. Once again, as I said to you, I am an electrician by trade. So going back to the AC component, like super high margins on service, indoor air quality.
Oh, yeah.
We find that rarely, and of course, COVID brought a big spike of that, and people thought they could get rid of COVID by getting indoor air quality, and people made all these false claims about that, and you got to be careful about that. And what I always say is, sell the product for what it is. You'll be just fine. You don't need to make any claims about trends. Just sell the product for what it is. Use the claims the manufacturer's claiming. Exactly. Another great item on that as well, super high margin. So if you're on right now and you're a heating and air contractor, when I look at everybody goes after the change out, but rarely is the duct system designed correctly. So what an amazing opportunity. You know what most people tell me? Yeah, we don't look at that. Why? It takes too long to do it. But I'm like, if you price the job correctly, right, and you do a good job for the customer, you're going to continue to get those referrals. So doing duct jobs. And then in addition to that, being a solution company, how do you crawl up in the attic and allow 30 years of insulation that hadn't been resprayed in 30 years? That's an easy high margin add-on item. It's like, once again, you got to have those conversations with your homeowners. And that, Mark, is how we take that one truck operator. We just start expanding their mind of what's possible and what they can accomplish.
Yeah. And for the HVAC guys out there listening and gals, when we did our house about 7 years ago or so, I can tell you that we swapped out the HVAC system, but I probably wouldn't notice diddly poo about that. But what they also did was they did go up in the attic and look at the ductwork, and I had leaks, and it was amazing. There was like a 1 foot opening in, one of the flexible ductworks. So they replaced all the ductwork, and then they blew up cellulose up in there. And man, it was like I lived in a different house the next day, right? I mean, we had better envelope, we had better, and the ductworks were blowing the AC and the heat into the house instead of the attic. It was amazing, man. It was mind-boggling to me how much of a difference that made. So for the guys out there, if you're replacing a system and not going in the attic and not, looking at that, and if they got problems up there, and I imagine most ductwork is in bad shape in most of the country.
So the challenge with that, Mark, and it's I'm not trying to put a knock against new construction. I was a new construction contractor myself and a technician, but keep in mind that standards are bare minimums, and if your house is built during the boom, right?
Exactly.
Or any type for that fact. In fact, not all inspectors are inspecting everything start to finish. They believe the contractor knows what they're doing. And just because contractors sub things out, just things happen, right? And so what we see and what we find is there's always opportunity from the original install that was not really installed to the best of its ability. And everybody that's on the line is going to know this as soon as I say it. The most important day in the life of any system, plumbing, electrical, or heating and air, is the day it's installed.
Yeah. I believe that.
And if it's
absolutely
not
do it right,
it leads to early failures, breakdowns. I mean, just it doesn't last as long. So I always recommend, as a component, one of the things we haven't talked about is making sure you're up to speed on the technical aspect of your trade.
Yeah. Which is moving fast in the HVAC and, all trades, in fact. So, it's no short task to do so. But if you love A, you're in business, you're running a business, you need to stay up to date. And B, you should love the business you're in and therefore want to, read and digest and everything that comes out, right?
Yeah. Sometimes we find that, people are easily distracted. We hear this often, right? So, hey, I think I'm going to open up an additional trade. And I'm like, have you mastered the one you're in yet?
Yeah.
Right? And until you have shown, and it's kind of like school, right? Well, it's like, yeah, but I'm kind of bored with it. I think that we could get a lot more customers. And by the way, some people have a very good success rate at that. Please, I'm not knocking that. So if somebody's listening to this, don't believe that I'm advocating that stay in your trade that you kind of started in. But just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean that you should. And I'll give you an example.
Right.
I'm an electrical contractor by trade, and me and my partner grew our business to a run rate. I sold my shares back in 2018 of $30 million on a service business. We had over 62 service truck, multiple locations across the state. And multiple times we were approached to buy other trade companies, but our goal was to hit $100 million. And that company will do $65 million this year.
Nice.
It just doesn't make sense. Like until you, quote, have checked the box, you really need to go into another trade. And once again, every market will be different and every owner will be different.
Yes. If you're a great operator, it's possible, like I said it earlier, you could succeed in any business, right? If you're a great operator.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I agree with you. Stay in your trade, maybe expand slowly locally. Mm-hmm. Like even the second state thing is pretty tough to pull off too, right? If you go outside of your state, I do see guys do that. And just last week I interviewed, I lost his name now. But $60 million company, he's got 6 companies in 3 states and just a great operator, crushing it. He knows everything about all systems, accounting, knows how to put together a company. Mm. But those are a rare breed. There's not a lot of those guys around.
Right.
So I would agree. Stay in your neighborhood, stay in your zone, be a master of it, right? Yeah. Unless you hate it.
Yeah, Mark, I've actually got a friend of mine who is in the panhandle of Florida, and it's a small town. And his company grew large enough that it would be considered a large company in a metropolitan city. And he never left the town. Like he didn't feel a need to expand into other cities. And he was like, we own our market. And what I would say is when you own a market, you become the Coke brand of your market. It's very difficult for people to move in and grab a foothold of what you're doing as long as you continue to market and brand yourself as the go-to person in town.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about that a little bit, Chris. So marketing, right? So I'm a big fan of direct response marketing, right? I used to be anti-brand marketing altogether. And I used to think that the home services industry was immune from Wall Street coming in and taking over, but that's not the case at all, I'm learning. And maybe you want to sell your business, right? So, and if you do, you have to grow your brand. And so you need a mixture of brand marketing and direct response marketing, right? So do you guys get into, you said, not deep in the marketing, but do you touch on growing the brand with these companies? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. So some people laugh and say, hey, your brand needs an overhaul. It needs a facelift. It needs this. It needs that. While I believe there's a lot of truth to that, I would give you an example of a $100 million company that is in the Phoenix area. And they may even be more than that now. They're in a Phoenix area in a white truck and just a small logo on the side of their truck, and they crush it. So my question always is do you really need a better brand? Right. And that point could be argued both ways. But while there are people that do a great job of branding their company. Now, I will tell you, Mark, I'm a big fan of brand. I believe brand wins the day in our space, but you can't just do branding alone, right? You got to be able to continue to stay in front of the eyes and ears of the customer so that you can build and dominate your market. So we often say this, if I'm in the HVAC world, like, oh, it's season again. Oh man, it's slow season again. But what I would say, Mark, is if you're an HVAC contractor and you're listening to this podcast, you should be marketing maintenance 12 months out of the year.
Right.
Most customers don't know they need maintenance. When it breaks, they go, oh, there's a maintenance offer. We should call them and get it maintained, right? So once again, maintenance offers throughout the year. I am a big fan of diversifying. So not dumping all of my money just into digital marketing. Now, what if I'm in LA? Digital marketing is probably going to be still a big thing. But let me say something, Mark, and I hope that you and I are on the same page on this. Direct mail and print is not dead.
No, it is not dead. Yeah, it'll depend on the market, but for the most part, yeah, it's it'll give you good ROI.
You ready to get a good chuckle out of this one?
Fire away.
The Yellow Pages was my number 3 lead source in one of my markets.
Is that right? The book itself still? The old-timey book?
The reason why, Mark, is because I understand my marketplace and my demographics. This is a retirement community. I'm in a demographic where typically most people go, okay, let's build a marketing plan. Who's your customer? You know what they always say, right? Oh, it's a female and she's 35 to 64 and she's a homeowner and this is her household income and this is her home value. Every market's different. And that's why you got to use a market study research before you just go in and wash, rinse, and repeat with some stinking cookie cutter marketing plan.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. Know your target.
Yeah. I am.
And then find that target. Yeah. Well, like you did earlier with the, what was that example? The repiping or no, the sewer, right? So we're looking for older homes and stuff. So you're not blasting out, that might not be a digital thing or, whatever. You're zeroing in, find the way to find the demographics that match and align with your target.
Yeah. Some of my markets though were not Yellow Pages, like they bombed. And what I would say is sometimes you just got to test things. You got to test them and prove that they work or they don't work. And then you've got to be willing to adjust. Some of the markets that I was in, billboards worked very well for me. But think about this. If I'm not in a market where people are very transient and on the road, billboards may not work, right? What about TV? Right. What about radio? And it's so funny, Mark, when I hear I'd hear sales reps come in all the time and tell me why their product, the one product they sold, was better than everybody else's product of medium in the market. And I just got to tell you, don't believe everything you hear. A good mix of mediums and markets is one of the most healthiest things that you can do. If you put all your eggs in one basket, live by the sword, die by the sword.
Yeah, 100%. Diversify it and try not to be a victim of just auction markets like Google search. You got to play that game, but that can't be your only game. You don't have control over what you're spending there. Yelp, Google, Angie's, etc. Could be a dangerous game. So yeah, diversify.
Yeah. And
truck wraps, of course. Well, I'm sorry. Let's go back to that branding a little bit because I might have overstepped there. So, for the guys who have 1, 2, 3 trucks, branding is probably not something you want to focus on just yet. There's a point where you grow and then you sit down with Chris and you figure out how big you want to get. And when you're at a certain point, then you're looking at maybe, billboards, this kind of branding and stuff. But in the meantime, just grow, right? Or if you're not going to sell, well, you still want to brand, locally.
Yeah.
But if you plan to sell, then branding is a very big part, I think. I could be wrong.
Another thing, Mark, that I really would like to impress upon the listeners today is that you got to understand what works. And to understand what works, you got to track it, right? So tracking it is around, in the old days before I had software and all this fancy stuff, when clients would call into my place of business, I would just have the person on the phone just be like, and where'd you find our number today? And I want you to hear this 2 questions. How did you hear about us? Where did you find our number today? How I heard about you was I saw your truck. Because let's be real, Mark, nobody sees the truck and go, ooh, let me get the telephone number off the side of that truck.
Right.
Probably not calling that number off the side of the truck. So what we typically find is when clients come to us, this is an area of opportunity for them to expand to become a better marketer, is tracking numbers. Everything needs a tracking number within reason. So I had over 250 tracking numbers in my business, Mark. I could tell you exactly where my leads were coming from and what my cost of leads were. Now, let me also say this. They might have got my direct mail piece. Then they seen my truck, drove down the road, seen the billboard, heard the radio, came home, seen the TV commercials, and hopped on the internet and found my number.
Exactly.
So you got to be a little bit wiser to that's not working. So when I hear people say things like that's not working, I'm like, okay, great. How can we test the theory to believe that's true? And it's not just the tracking number. It's an irresistible offer that you put into the marketing component that helps answer that question. An example, something unique that's irresistible. $193 off of something. That's a very unique offer. So when I see a $193 discount and coupon in my system, that's where that came from. They called from that piece.
Right. That still might be, they might have had 5 or 6 impressions before that they saw that particular, direct piece. So it's hard to say. And I forget what the old school, but, people do see you 6, 7, 8 times before they pull that trigger, right? It's pretty rare. They're going to just, from one impression. The cool thing, Chris, about radio and TV ads are, and even your truck wraps, actually. So I see on your blog, you guys are very active with an SEO blog going. So hats off to you for doing that. And I'm a firm believer of SEO being, a long-term play to greatly reduce your, cost of acquisition, while also just building a massive amount of content that over the years will, should bring you in a lot of leads, and leads that have already come to know, like, and trust your company because they've read, you've informed them, you've helped them along the buyer's journey. But when you run radio and TV ads, now you have sent people to Google, and I'm searching your company name, Blue Collar Success Group, because I heard you on the radio. So I'm going to Google, Blue Collar Success Group. Maybe I heard your name, Chris, Blue Collar Success Group. And when you do that, so on the SEO side, a little tidbit for the audience out there, when people start Googling your brand name, your entire site starts to get powered up, especially if it's, it starts happening in good volume. So that's where radio and TV has another benefit to it that's kind of hidden behind the scenes, which can be super, super powerful. So food for thought for the gang out there.
I always refer to Mark as and there's different perspectives of how to look at this, but remember, I'm playing a long-term game. I'm not trying to market some special event that I'm doing, right? I'm going after it. There could be special offers that I could do that could tie into this, but radio, TV, and billboards, I always explain to people, it's kind of like supercharging the machine. So all your other marketing, if it's a well thought out plan, radio, TV, and billboards are only going to enhance everything else that you're doing.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you get all that other foundation built first. And usually you're not going to get into radio or TV till later anyway. You got some good revenue go.
Right.
And that's the perfect time. So just to remember all those. So you're right. It's going to power up all of your other marketing, every single part of it. So that's super awesome. Cool beans. All right, Chris. Well, let's see. Before we wrap it up, because we're getting there. How about a couple of resources that you recommend to people? Books, mentors, podcasts, anything you got out there?
Wow, that's a pretty big one for me. A lot of what I glean to is typically out of a coaching organization that I'm a part of. It's called Strategic Coach. And there's a lot of great entrepreneurs in there. There's book writers in there, philanthropists. I mean, there's all those resources. So I would say I would struggle to give you like a hone in on one. And the reason why is because I have learned in my life that balance is a good thing, and too much of something for Chris is a bad thing. So if I only read one particular author, all I get is their perspective. While all their books are great, I try to widen my palette. So if I were to look at a podcast as an example, some of the podcasts is not just business based either, right? So the challenge is most of us think all we need is business stuff. So be thinking in the areas of like, if I'm trying to work on my physical being, like being physically fit, I'm going to check out a podcast on how to actually eat healthy, right? So I don't mean to dodge your question, but the answer is it would be too long of a list for me to give you.
Yeah, gotcha. I like it. Well, there's a lot of parts of us to grow and educate, right? So, philosophy, all kinds of avenues to go down. Like you say, you got to get that head right.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've got some oldies, but goodies that I've read multiple times. And, once it's all about the latest and greatest book. And there's a lot of wisdom found. And, when I look at How to Win Friends and Influence People, been around for a long time. Such a great book. Who Moved My Cheese? Right. Such a great book, right?
Another great
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Such a great book. The 4 Agreements. Such a great book. Like all these are stuff we all know. And the challenge is what I would say, Mark, is most of us are just chasing the next new thing and the next new information. And what I'm going to say is sometimes we just need to slow our mind down and go back to, hey, what are some books that are on my shelf that I've read once but never touched them again?
Yeah. Hit it again. Grab Who Moved My Cheese again.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. There's plenty enough out there to fill the brain and get motivated, get educated, and grow the biz. Awesome. Well, Chris, you've been awesome, man. If people want to reach out and connect with you, take a look at your training systems, where do they go?
Yep. The best place to go is you can connect with us on our website at the bluecollarsuccessgroup.com. That's the best way to reach out. You can find information there. You may also be able to capture a telephone number if you're just like, hey, I just want to talk to somebody. You can find our telephone numbers on there as well. I don't mind if it's okay. I don't mind. I'd be glad to also, in addition to that, give out that telephone number if that's something that you believe would be valuable for your audience. Okay. So the telephone number is 877-968-2244. Once again, that number is 877-968-2244.
That's beautiful. So Chris, if I'm, Mark the plumber, how long do I need to, or not need to, how long would I stay with you guys for normally? Like short time, or can I stay with you guys my whole career and you help me, get to that $100 million company? Or
so we do have companies today that have joined us from the very start, still around with us today. As an organization, the owner and founder of the company started the company 10 years ago. He was a contractor himself. He was a part of a coaching and training organization himself. And just thought like, hey, I feel like contractors need something in addition to what we're doing. So it's really been, I would say, the past 2 to 3 years, we've really been focused on trying to build and grow this business and our brand. To answer your question, you never outgrow blue collar. This is not like college. It's not like you go and get your degree and move on. And the reason why is because it's not just about the tools, the resources, and the trainings. It's the coach that comes alongside of you. And coaches' jobs are to 100% to extract potential out of you. I'm having different conversations with different contractors. Some of them are like, hey, Chris, I'm struggling to make profits. Hey, Chris, I sold my company and I'm owned by private equity, but I have an earnout. Can you help me go earn my earnout? So once again, and we still work with private equity companies today that have enlisted companies and our services as well. Some of the largest ones in the country of names I won't mention, but we all know who they are, right? But at the same point, we got independent operators that are pushing, $70 and $80 million all the way down to the one truck operator. So what I would say is the day that you think you have it all figured out and you don't need outside help would be the day you outgrew blue collar.
There you go. I like it. Hey, so now you provoked another question, so you can't go. A lot of guys are looking to sell their company, and maybe that's way down the road. But what is private equity looking for in a company? How do I set my company up to be a prime target for private equity?
Trick question, because it's going to depend on the private equity firm itself as to what they're looking for. In many cases, private equity firms, some of them are looking to make a fast turn. Some of them are looking to make more of a long-term turn. Here's what I can tell you. If you're listening to this podcast, you should always run your business like you plan on selling it. The reason why is you'll make a lot of different decisions, no matter if it's short-term or long-term. So what are they looking for? They're looking for companies, and once again, the private equity is going to be different. Some of them are looking to buy and tuck under their existing company. So they will basically erase your brand and put their brand on that. That's one strategy.
I see.
The second strategy is they will buy it, keep it the same brand, but the owner goes away, so they put leadership and management in place.
Okay.
Third one is they're looking to find companies that the owner only plans on staying on for a short amount of time to transition away. And that owner has already built in leadership and management so that they're absentee. What I'm going to say is build it like you plan on selling it and just understand it'll always be sellable. If you want maximum dollar, you've got to run it exactly like I shared, which is maximum amount of profit and growing at a very healthy and steady rate. And there's a lot of variables. People are talking about multiples this and multiples that. At the end of the day, the better the business is ran, the higher the multiple, along with the size of the business. So a larger business, that is, if you put two large businesses side by side and one is ran better than the other, the one that's ran better gets a higher multiple. Yeah. That isn't to say that they're only looking for large businesses. In some cases, we find that they're looking for $1 to $3 million companies. They're not looking for 10 and 15, while there's some equities that won't talk to you at 1 to 3. What I would say is if someone is in the market and they're trying to explore what does that look like, reach out to us. We've helped several of our clients go through the buyout process. We don't act as their broker. We do not act as their legal representation. All we act as is a consultant in their corner of what to ask for and what to think about when it comes to selling your company. Reason why? I don't believe that everybody has all the information they need to make the decision when it's time to sell, to go through that process. And my best advice is don't go through it alone. You don't need to. In fact, I tell you, one of our clients, we told him, hey, we're here to help. He chose to go at it alone. His hindsight 2020 is, Chris, I wished I'd have had you guys involved. I would not be up against this situation dealing with this, while others we've helped get, more money for the business because of the way that we help them position in the conversations and things to ask for. So, at the end of the day, I'm not saying that we're experts at M&A at all, but I can tell you we've been through it several times, and I bought several companies myself. Along with that, a stint of my career, I worked at a large corporation. where I was managing about $150 million a year in business, and we did a lot of M&A in that. And I can basically tell you what I know from the inside perspective.
Nice. Yeah. Great advice. And yeah, reach out and contact Chris, because your team's been through it several times. And if you're the, you're the owner, you're the operator, more than likely you haven't been through it at all. So don't go into the ghost town, man. Go in with a team that's armed and ready. And also great advice, build it like you're going to sell it. Yeah. Build it like you're going to put a GM in place and you're going to go to Hawaii or Fiji or wherever. And whether you're going to sell it or not, or pass it to the next generation, whatever have you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great advice, man. Chris, you've been awesome, man. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks to our listeners for listening, of course. Share it on social. We appreciate your time. Chris, you've been awesome. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. Thanks for the invitation, Mark.
Thank you, sir. We'll connect again.
Yes, sir.
Stay in touch. Thanks to our listeners out there for sharing their time and attention with us. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, subscribe to our podcast so you can be notified of future episodes. Feel free to share this one on your social channels. Good luck out there and create a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Battle Plan Marketing Podcast. To power up your home service business, for show notes, visit battleplanmarketing.com/podcast. If you enjoyed our show, please share it on social. Until next time.